wellness is a basic human right and that everyone is worthy of a fair and just opportunity to be as healthy as possible. We recognize that locally there's significant obstacles to optimum health, such as racism, power imbalances, and poverty. These oppressive factors, as well as inequities across the social determinants of health, substantially and disparately impact the health and life outcomes of marginalized and vulnerable communities. This is the fourth of 8 exciting, informative webinars. Each webinar will have 2 presenters and cover key social determinants of health. The webinars will last for about an hour and a half. The presentations will be followed by 30 minutes of Q&A. The webinars will be recorded and they'll be available for you to review. And our presenters are both experts in their field and leaders and representatives of our community. And they're going to share with you the inequities, the challenges, and opportunities in our health system. You will be assigned some pre-work, as you probably already have, to do before each webinar. And so my reminder to you today, as on every Monday webinar, is that knowledge is power. Our fourth webinar topic is youth violence as a contagious disease, root causes and cures. The presenters are Paz Simpson and QB MacBalla. And I just want to say that Ola is the Health Equity Fellowship Project Director for PNLV, and she is our webinar manager. And I'm just going to read you, I have some brief bios of the 2 people that are going to speak. Paz Simpson is a published author, long-term Allentown resident, community activist, and program director of Zero Youth Violence, a program of Promised Neighborhoods, Lehigh Valley. He graduated from Lehigh University with a BA in International Relations in 1997. He's also known as the happiness engineer. And Paz spreads his joy from his very first smile, whether in his daily videos, lighting up a stage, or in his coaching sessions. It's evident that Paz's mission is to help create a happier, healthier, wealthier world. He teaches people how to make the choice for happiness and to define what success feels like with them, for them. His message and understanding of the true causes of happiness catapulted him into the limelight as a keynote speaker and trainer. Paz has dedicated his business and life to opening doors that were previously closed for others. It was a natural transition for him to become involved with his local community, helping gang members and returning citizens to deal with the violence that has shaped their narrative. As the program director for Zero Youth Violence, Paz is dedicated to fighting the disease of violence. He believes that violent behavior can be understood, diagnosed, and treated through a health lens. He sees poverty as violence and believes most acts of violence are the results of being impoverished. Paz has seen that opportunity is the antidote to violence and believes that only when Allentown is cured from the plague of violence can the Queen City truly thrive as a city without limits. Welcome, Paz. Now I'm going to read you briefly QB's bio. You may have to help me with this, QB. Is your name Naquan?
Yes.
Okay, so Naquan Godfrey, more affectionately known as QB MacBalla, is a passionate father of 5 children. Ashy, QB's street name, grew up in Brooklyn without parental guidance. The 1980s were rough for many Black families, and QB's was no different. Abandoned by his father, with his mother struggling with drug addiction, the gang became his family. As times grew harder in his teenage years, QB rose in the ranks of the Bloods through his dedication and integrity. A young father, Determined to create a better life for his children, QB's life changed with the sudden death of his infant son. Angered by the cards that life dealt him, QB became more focused on his grind. He used his loud, brash nature to keep people off balance and distracted them from the intelligence of his movements. Always remembering he was a father first, his sacrifices never mattered as long as he created opportunity for his children. QB has very little regrets for the life he chose, except for his time in jail. For QB, jail stole his time away from his children and impeded his ability to guide them. Being incarcerated took him away from the reasons for his sacrifice, his family. Returning home as a proud gang member, QB is determined to redefine what is gangster. For QB, being a stand-up man, a good father, and taking care of your priorities is gangster. Leading by example through his work with Promise Neighborhoods, Lehigh Valley, QB works every day to be the change he would like to see. Thank you, QB. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Good to have you
Hello,
here.
everybody. How y'all doing today? I know I can't hear y'all. Y'all probably can hear me.
Yes. So when we're thinking about violence, unfortunately, most people think about gun violence. They think about the after effect. They do not think of the root cause of violence. You know, as program director of Zero Youth Violence, one of the things I remind people, because they always remind me how great I'm doing, and oh man, this is that. 20 years ago, you wouldn't be in the room with me the same way you're in the room with me now, because I was no different than QB. Even though I had a college degree, I had a felony. So me having a felony didn't afford me some of the opportunities that life should have given me with a college degree. So poverty hit. Now, what happens when you can't feed your family? What happens when, someone has a need, right, to eat? QB, as a father, what happens when one of your 5 children can't eat? Do you sell drugs at that moment because you feel like selling drugs is the fun thing to do? Or do you do what you have to do in order to feed the children?
I mean, to be honest, you trying to do the least thing you can do to harm or to do any type of crime to, feed your family. But, you're not trying to resort to selling your body, You know what I mean? That's just like ill. But at times, when your back is really against the wall, sometimes you have to do what you have to do, and desperate measures, you just, go with the flow at that point at a time. And then it get to a point to where it's like you actually start liking it because the money is coming so fast. It's addictive because you spending the money and then it's like it's coming. And then now it's like you able to get everything for these kids that you ever wanted to get for them. But now you got to worry about the law behind your back. Then you got the people that's hating on you because they want to rob you,
Let's stop there. As you, and I want you guys to pay attention to what he's saying here. It starts in desperation, right? His need to feed the children. But then after a while, as things happen, because opportunity affords for change, right? More money comes. So now you're just as addicted to the lifestyle as the addict that's actually buying the drug. And how does violence come from there, right? Now he just said haters, police. So now you have more money. So now you're attracting more attention. And we attract more attention, in need of actually bringing us more customers, right? Because the flashier you are, the more customers you have. Now let's take that in reverse, where someone who goes to work every day, you know, someone who's making $1 million in the street versus someone who's making $1 million in a corporate job. You know, that person is more likely less flashy, less likely to get robbed, because people are less likely to know what they're doing in order to feed their family. They're less likely to see the progression that it took for them to get from point A to point B. But in the streets, every step you take, someone's watching.
At all times. No matter what you do, you think you being slick about it, and it's like the bricks be talking to people. You know, like actually the actual bricks that's in the building that you standing in front of when you had that conversation or made that sale. But the hard part about it is everybody don't understand. Is like, yeah, well, you know, I'm not robbing nobody, I'm not stabbing nobody, I'm not really hurting nobody, but you're killing your own people slow. You know, you're killing your own people slowly with it. So then it comes back to the point to where you wondering like, am I gonna go to hell for this? So then now you got to change your ways.
And I want to start there, right? Zero youth violence is an opportunity to do that. I saw Ola starting to show some of the slides. So I thank you. You know, you're on top of it. First, there's a slide that shows group and community norm change. Group and community norm change. That is important, right? Because healing is done in community, right? We've got to see group and community norm change happen in Allentown. During the COVID, during epidemic, we got to watch gang members from different sets, Bloods, Crips, Latin Kings, all come together because of a need, right? A need to take care of their own. There's a very disheartening myth about gangs because of what happens after, right? That they want to harm others. But we got to prove during COVID that the main purpose of the gang is for the defense of family. Am I correct?
Wow, that's a crazy topic right there. I'm gonna let y'all really look at me now. Whoa. It's like a kind of touchy situation there, you know. It's like asking about the child death or something, you know. It's like kind of touchy because, you know, well, it started like this. Many moons ago, you know, my grandmother died, and I used to hang around a bunch of gang members. I wasn't even a gang member then, but it was out, you know, I wasn't even a gang member, but I used to just be around them, you know. They was out, I lived in the project. So, you know, they outside, I'm outside. I'm playing basketball. You know, I played Brooklyn, USA. You know, I'm playing basketball. So, you know, I was already guilty by association. You know what I mean? So my grandmother died, and long story short is they showed more love to me than my actual family that I was supposed to be grieving with. You understand me? See, a lot of people think you get into a gang or you get involved in certain activities because you're scared or you just want to harm people or you just want to be down. But people never really look at the real part of it, man. All them people that joined the gang want to be loved. They want to be a part of something that means something. You understand?
I want to stop you there. Hold on. And that's important, right? One of the three things that we attack here at Promise Neighborhood, right, is creating a sense of hope, creating a sense of belonging, and creating a sense of agency, the ability to make purposeful decisions over your life. What QB just said is something that happens to many of the gang members in our cities across America, right? The gang gave them their first sense of belonging, their first sense of family, their first sense of love. So we're losing many of our children, especially in Allentown, a city that does not invest into community solutions, right? When we go into other cities, Philadelphia invests 2%. Pittsburgh, 1%. Allentown, 0%. $0 are actually invested towards community solutions. They can try to candy coat it any way they want to, but those are real numbers. So we lose our children because the kids need something to belong to, right? There's a good song when we were growing up. I mean, there's a very diverse group of people. Yeah, remember this song? Give me something to believe in. Give me something to believe in. Right? The gangs have given these kids something to believe in because the community has forgotten them. The people who's supposed to love them, the village, right? My mother told me it takes a village to raise a child. The village has forgotten about the children. So the gangs have gotten to them. So let's talk, right? Interrupting, detect and interrupt potentially violent conflicts is what's on our screen right now. One of the great things that we have here, right, is because of people like a QB, like a Jose, willing to be the change that they want to see. We're able to not only detect, because he'll come in. There's been times when QB, if there wasn't a zero youth violence, if there was, where does he go vent? You know, there's been times he's come in and may have scared somebody else, but he know he can come to me and I'm gonna give him a hug. You know, one of the things that we count here is not only how many times we've interrupted violence, right? But prior to COVID, how many hugs we give these grown men, right? How many times can they see, feel, and know that they're loved?
That's drastic. Like it's really like loved. Love. That's like, it's kind of tough because what's love? You know what I mean? Like growing up how I grew up, there was no love. There was no time for love. My mother was getting high. You know, I got brothers and sisters that's looking up to me, you know. I used to get picked at, you know, cracking jokes at me because I was taking my brothers and sisters to free lunch. You know, I used to have to wear my cousin's hand-me-downs because my mom was getting high. You know, they get mad in the street, take my clothes off, you know, typical stuff family do. You know, family always be the first ones to hurt you. But the love that gang showed at that time, when I really needed to be embraced, was like I felt like I ain't even gonna lie to you. Like I felt alive at that time. You know, I haven't felt alive in a long time. I felt like I was somebody. I meant something to somebody at that time until I had some kids and really realized what life was about. You know? Love is crazy because love will kill you, love will hurt you, love will make you happy. You know?
I want to unpack that. So when we say, right, and I don't want to lose our audience because we're saying that violence, right? Violence is stemmed from poverty, right? So we listen to QB talk about his mom dealing with drug addiction. We're listening to his father abandoning him, you know, and QB grew up in a broken home. I did not. So let's listen to my mother and father. Well, my mother and stepfather raised me, right? Me and 4 other children in Harlem in the 1980s. So I can't say that my mother didn't care or my father didn't care. But what I can tell you was welfare cheese didn't taste good. What I can tell you, right, was when you can't melt the cheese to make your sandwich, it don't taste that good. What I can tell you is what a wish sandwich tastes like. You know, I don't know if any of y'all had a wish sandwich before, but a wish sandwich is, I wish there was some meat on this sandwich. Mom only put mayonnaise on both sides and said, you better fill yourself. You know, at that time, You know, I didn't have the same things that he had, but I had a need to get past the kids making fun of me. The kids telling me, me and QB were talking about this the other day. What made me sell my first drug? What made me actually commit my first crime was the kids in school. I would still remember my mom bought me this brand new coat she was so proud of. She was so proud of this coat. I get to school and the kids said I got a roach leg fur coat. Roach leg fur. What the heck is roach leg fur? And every kid laughed every day. There go the kid with the roach leg fur, until I sold a drug, until I decided I'm gonna get myself past these roach leg furs on my back. I never put my mother in a position again to ever buy me anything again, because she didn't understand what I was going through. She didn't understand because she's from the islands. That roach leg fur was better than she's ever had. You know, she remembers climbing the trees to get her own fruit to feed herself. You know, so poverty, violence, kids start to react being bullied upon, right? Then you start to decide, what do I do next, right? You heard the story of Ashy. It was only a quick sentence in his bio, but I'm going to make him go back and touch on that, because Ashy for a Black person is never a compliment. It's never a compliment. So tell him a little bit how Ashy felt to you as a young man.
Wow. It's like, you know how you get in the pool? You get out the pool and y'all be sitting on the side, you know, getting y'all little tan on, you know, you chilling. But that chlorine start drying. That skin start to get tight, you know? You start feeling like you're about to crack. So you start, you know, y'all women start running to the car to get that bag, to put that lotion on. But I ain't had that. You know, it was times we had to use butter. You know what I mean? A little bit of cooking oil or something. You know what I mean? Get your hand, or even, you know, regular grease. You know what I mean? Ashy was just like being classy. You know what I mean? Back then, you know, who cared about that? You ashy, you know? But for people nowadays, this society to back then, when people picked at you and did all of this, you didn't try to commit suicide. You understand me? Nowadays, these kids are killing themselves. You know what I mean? Because they can't take it. Everybody laughing every day, everybody clowning them. You understand me? So that's one part of it. So then the other part of Ashy is, it seems like at a certain age, no matter what you wear, who buy it, what it look like, it just feel like you Ashy. You know what I mean? It comes through in like 3 different forms.
So I want you to think about this as a young man, right? And we think about your formative years. You're going through the years that construct who you're going to be later on in life. And all you see is doors closing, doors closing, doors closing. You don't see any superheroes around you, right? It wasn't even, especially till recently, they didn't even draw Black superheroes too often. You know, we had Storm, we had Luke Cage, we had Green Lantern. Then they turned Green Lantern gay, which isn't a problem. But if that's the only 3 of the superheroes you have and you're trying to figure something out, it's something different. You know, because everyone's different. You need everyone represented. So when you're in school, you know, how many teachers look like you? Because this is violence. We're talking about this. How many teachers look like you going through your formative years?
In school?
In school. How many of your teachers were Black?
Maybe 3.
Let's do this, right? And I want us to really unpack everything, because when we're thinking about, you know, curing violence, you know, I always put it in 4 E's, right? Education, employment, entrepreneurship, and emotional support. Most men in inner cities are victims of PTSD. Let me repeat that for you. Most men and women, let's not discount the women. Most men and women in inner city environments are victims of PTSD. They know someone who's been murdered. Sometimes they witnessed the murder. You know, my best friend was killed in front of me when I was 15 years old. He took 8 bullets. So those aren't things, I've never gone to counseling for that. I never even thought about going to counseling for that. But most people haven't been in a place where they can see the danger behind not being counseled behind that. You know, when you're living in an environment where your teachers do not look like you, how do you aspire to at least be a teacher? We ain't even got to worry about being a doctor, lawyer, all the other great things that happen. You know, things that, you know, that become your norm, become the basketball players, the rappers, and the drug dealers. Because those are the superheroes in your neighborhoods. Those are the people that you got to see come from nothing. Like Drake would say, started from the bottom, now we're here. Those are the people, you know, when you never see a teacher around you, you know, how can you aspire to do more? Opportunity comes from relationships. So poverty is violent, right? Opportunity comes from relationships. Let's take it. QB being a gang member, the opportunity that he had, unfortunately, was to sell drugs. Right? Because those relationships, those are the relationships that led to. Now he's in promised neighborhood. We've seen him and Jose get new opportunity because relationships, right? They've been able to meet new people and be respected as the men that they are, right? But not by their past, because everyone has made a mistake. If you check American wealth, and let's do this, American wealth is all built on crime. Somebody was a bootlegger, that's a drug dealer. It's just a nice name for it, right? You know, you think about how many different American wealthy families, when we talk about generational wealth, was built in acceptable crime. When you think about that, and how many of us are only looked at for the reaction of poverty. We're going to keep going. Poverty is violence. Poverty is violence, right? Why is poverty violent? You know, because when I had no opportunity, when I had no other ways to be able to feed my family, I was going to do what it took. I was going to rob, steal, cheat. But once we learn other things, once new doors open, there's no way that we can go back to the same old ways. QB being here every day has not only looked to open a door for himself, right? But you've gotten other younger people that would have been in the set or could have been in the set opportunity, correct?
Facts. Oh man. It's like I don't even know how to start to explain this one. It's like all you need is opportunity, you know. You need a platform. First and foremost, once you get a platform, then you know you're able to. How can I say this without using certain language? You know, because I'm so used to talking to people in the street so much, so you know you have to get right back to them, and I don't want to say some things that might offend some people, or might. But anyway, I'm sorry. Let me get back to the topic. It's crazy because I see so many kids that look up to so many people that you would never think that they look up to. And the reasons that they look up to these people is not because of the violence they cause, not because of the drugs they sold. It's because they showing more love than what they getting at home. You see, nowadays, all kids want attention. Everybody know, you still, a lot of times you get stuck in your career. You ain't got that much time. But, you got to get to work. You got mommy, got daddy, got to pay them bills. You got to do this. So you ain't got that time to spend with these kids. So it's like, we distance for a little bit, for at least 6 to 7 months of the year. We not going to be around these kids. But that's when these kids start running wild. This is why I always ask everybody to please make sure that you're a part of your kid's life at all times. Because the music, the lifestyles, the music videos, all the movies on YouTube they got right now, them little hood videos and all that. Everybody trying to be part of something, and we losing our kids to it.
I want to touch on that. I don't because I saw a good video the other day, and it said the difference between our generation and the generation behind us is we thought we were fighting to claim territory. We thought we were fighting our way out of poverty. These kids, because of the music, because of the drug addiction, they're mostly just fighting for attention on World Star Hip Hop. They're fighting to be seen by the police and not know, because it's now being entrenched into everything that they're doing. It's ingrained into their community norm. So how do we change that? What do we do? How do we change that community norm? First, well, you heard QB say, right? Give them a sense of belonging. When I grew up in Harlem, I didn't have to worry about my mother spanking me if I did something wrong. Everyone that knew me along the way home got to spank me and then tell my mom, right? I still remember Miss Yolanda. And everybody got a Miss Yolanda in their life. Y'all may not know my Miss Yolanda, but Miss Yolanda was my friend Vaughn's mother. Miss Yolanda caught me and Vaughn sneaking out of Central Park. We weren't supposed to be in Central Park. This is right after the Central Park rape case. So this is right after they took Tronny and everyone else. So I did know everyone when they see us. So right after that, all the parents banned the kids from the park because they thought that we would all automatically become victims. So Miss Yolanda see me and her son sneaking over the park wall, trying to move quick. She didn't wait to call my mother to spank me. She spanked me, and on the way to my house, she just rang the doorbell like, I just finished beating your boy. Do you want a piece too? She's like, did you beat your son? It's like, yeah. So I'm coming to get some. I'm not saying that the corporal punishment is what was good, but the care, to know that somebody else in the neighborhood cared enough to go out of their way, to know that someone else in the neighborhood was going to pull your coattail, to know that the village still existed. We have to reconstruct the village. We have to rebuild the community. We have to first be willing to take personal responsibility, right? It starts with us. Every one of us saying, I can do better. He has on a t-shirt. I don't know if you can see QB's t-shirt because we trying to share this computer, right? Let's see if we got it. It says, no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. For too long, we've been accepting things that we know is not right and then blaming the victims. If you don't teach me how to behave and I act like an animal, is that my fault or yours? If you don't allow me enough money to feed my family when I throw this gun in your mouth, is that my fault or yours? right? If you close doors to me just because I'm wearing a do-rag, when you get what I give you, in order to make sure my kids have a roof over their head, is that my fault or yours? A lot of times we spend times blaming those who are only in a reactionary position instead of seeing the root cause. Education changed my life. You know, like I said, I'm blessed. You know, I got in trouble a little bit, but I did graduate from Lehigh University, like Miss Julie said. I was the first Black person to graduate from Raven Academy Upper School in this area. You know, 250 years that school was arrived before I got to go through the doors. So opportunity for me was different, because remember, we say opportunity is based on relationships, right? So I went to school with some of the wealthiest people in this city. I went to school with some of the wealthiest people in the world. So after I realized that I can really rely on relationship, I can still call back based on my integrity, based on the work that I've done in the past, based on showing up every day. You could not just look me in the face and write me off as just another drug dealer. You could not just write me off as just another criminal. When you knew my story, you know that I have kids to feed. You knew my story. You know what my mom went through. You knew my story. So opportunity arose and I was able to do other things. But that's not QB's story. And I want you to know the difference, right? Because it does, without relationship, without people taking ownership on doing something different, we have more opportunities of a hardship like a QB than you do have a success story of a Paz. So QB, you coming home from prison, did you get to call any? And it's not about race, but it's important that we point this out. Were you able to call any of your white friends to help you out? Were you able to call any of your educated friends to get you a job? Were you able to do what?
To be honest, before I got out of prison, I was scared, because I done made all these promises to these kids, and I didn't want to come home and be a failure to myself. And me failing myself was failing them. So I was afraid, you know what I mean? Like, I cried like a baby for the last 6 days. The day I was going home, I must have took a poop 7 times. You know, I was so nervous. I was scared. You know, I was just, I know, because I know myself. I know if my back get against the wall, I know what I know how to do with no problem to make sure these kids got something to eat at any given time, you know? And I came home and I ended up meeting, I came home, my kid's mom caught a DUI, so she had to go do some type of time in prison because she was already on probation or something like that. So now I got the weight of the world on my back. I got 3 kids that live with me, and they looking at me like, Dad, what are you gonna do? So it's either me tell them to go F theyself or man up, you know? So I had to be the man that I needed to be. So everything else, the gang, the drugs, everything else went out the window. And I just went to so many places, like I literally I literally went to all these places like dressed. Like, I mean, I smelled like $1 million. I don't know a female that wouldn't have wanted me to talk to her that day. My breath smelled good. My haircut was good. I had on great clothing. You know, my attitude, my spirits was high, and everybody shot me down. And when I mean they shot me down, like, yeah, we'll give you a call. And then one of my other friends went in there behind me, and he got the job. Crazy, right? Then, you know, I just kept going. Then I ended up meeting one of my old friends that I did some time with. He said, Q, I can get you in there where I'm at. Q, I know you. You're going to come to work. You got them kids. I know you. Trader Joe's. I worked for Trader Joe's in a freezer. It was like -5 in there. And I was doing it's called recuperation. You know, I was the person that be sending the stuff to organizations like I work for. Ain't this a coinky thing, right? Because I was the one to go through all the stuff that was damaged to send it to all the nonprofit organizations to be the tax write-off for them. They gave me a shot, you know? But once I learned, I felt like everywhere I got a job at when I got out of prison lately, every time I learned what they taught me and I mastered it, you know, I'm one of them people, you show me something, I'm not going to stop till I know how to do it the right way. You understand what I'm saying? My ambitions is different. That's why everybody be looking like, yo, but how you do this? And I'm a little bit different because I know one thing for sure is anything you put your mind to, you can do it. But as a child, I didn't have that time to go to school. You know, I had to take care of these kids because mommy was upstairs high. You know, she didn't want to hear that. She was trying to get right. But it's funny because a lot of people will look at that situation differently. Like, why didn't you go for help? And back then, go to help to who? Who could I go to? BCW, so they could take me and put me in the system? And I would have ended up worse than or crazier than I was already. In the system, you got to fight every day. And I mean every day. Every one of them group homes they put these kids in nowadays, you got to fight so much. And then you want to know why these kids come home and feel like they got a chip on their shoulder. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to make sure that we keep unpacking these things, you know, because as we're looking at this, as we're listening to these stories, right? These aren't just made up stories. This is life, and our lives are no different than anyone else's, right? And I'm showing you the dichotomy, right? Of because we're two kids that came from nothing. My mother was a welfare mother, you know. The difference in our situation, unfortunately for him, his mother, you know, was a drug addict during his formative years. My mother, you know, was not. So she pushed education. So I was given education opportunities that afforded me new ways, but it was poverty is still violent, right? So I was at Moravian Academy. And you think, oh yeah, he's at a great school. They provided my room and board. They provided my food. You know, sounds great, but I'm in school with some of the wealthiest kids in school. My clothes still look like Harlem. Kids got on Polo. I got on Ono. You know, so now there's a whole new dichotomy. You know, there's a whole new thing because now there's a new form of bullying. There's a new form of mental abuse. And then there's things that we don't know because in our community, the drug addicts, they look bad. In your community, the drug addicts, they still get to go to school. There were kids in my school who had $10,000 a month drug habits. You know, when we had kids who couldn't get $10,000 a month or families who didn't have, my mother didn't make $10,000 a month. My mother and father together at that time didn't make $10,000 a month. So while at Moravian Academy, I had to work a job to buy my own food for the stuff that they didn't feed me. I had to buy my own clothes. So I had to find a way to hustle because even though you think I'm getting the best education, we still got to live for now. The now, you know, as you're going through, not everyone has the support system that needs to get them from point A to point B. And that whole time, you know, when I say it's violent, right? You think about now cyberbullying is a huge thing, but poverty is a bully on your back every day. When you have to think about how I'm feeding my family, when you got to think about how am I going to put clothes on their back, you know, my mom figured out education was a way out for her children, but she still didn't figure out how to feed us until we were done. You know, I hate bananas. I hate bananas because my mother was a wizard with bananas. banana pancakes, banana fritters. My mama can make a banana do a million things.
That's what happened when you're from the island.
Right? Poverty is violent. You know, when I still remember going to my little friends and taking over my banana fritter and him telling me how nasty it was. But I remember how hard my mom worked to make that fritter. I beat the tar out of that young man. Because I knew if my mom would have knew how he felt about her fritter, she would have cried. She'd have cried big. Poverty is violent. QB, I know there's stories because as QB talks about his mother, you know, he still to this day, even though he'll tell you about the drug addiction she went through, to this day, QB still takes care of his mother. He still cares and takes care of her like she was there every day. And why do you do it? What's your reason?
I mean, there is no me without her. I mean, I can't explain it. I mean, she was my mother and my father at one point, you know, until, you know, I mean, I take care of that woman because she gave me a gift. And the gift she gave me was life, you know, and we got our ups and our downs. But at the end of the day, that might be the only person that really understand you. You know what I mean? That know you from the start, that really understand why you do certain things you do, why you act the way you act.
Did we just lose them?
Did we lose them?
I think we did.
Looks like we're having some technical difficulties here. Just you guys just give me 1 second. Let me see.
All right, well, we can, so I'm driving.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna reach out to Paz and QB to see how we can get them back connected. Okay, I see them here.
I'll keep my phone here for a little bit.
Okay.
So when they talk about the models that we use with passive for violence and HPC, we use models like the pure violence model, the international model, the look about the case for my health equity and the public health link. And it's called pure violence. It comes out of the University of Illinois and it's used internationally. It has successful to violence in communities that have implemented the code up to 80+%. So to give you one example, in Allentown, Paz and Chief talked about this, we work with former gang members and gang members who we call credible messages. These people from the community that have relationships in the community, that are known in the community, and that garner respect. And we work with them to diffuse situations as they occur. It's one part of it. And the other part is every time an incident of violence occurs, they respond to that incident, whether it's going to home, going to school, going to players to prevent retaliation. So this is one of our credible messages. And it's really important that we work with people from the communities that have relations with the community with any type of message, right? So specifically in this work around violence prevention, if Julie or I or Ola was to go in there and try to resolve an issue with somebody, they're not going to trust us and they're not going to communicate the same way that they will communicate with someone from their community or connected to their community who is a credible message because they are survivors and former perpetrators of the crime. I think it's important like that. Oh, I'm hearing it hard to hear.
So we are back. I apologize. We're having all kinds of technical difficulties in the office. Ola, if you let us back in, get the computer back on too. So, But yes, I want to build on what Dr. Basford said. Credible messengers. Having people who are closest to the pain being the ones providing the solutions. One of the things that we know is you cannot spell testimony without going through tests.
Okay. Paz, are you muted again?
Can you guys hear me better now?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Can
we
hear
can,
you.
Paz.
Just can't see you can't see your video.
Okay, I'll make that work too. Bang, we're back. Me and QB are back together. We're back. Yeah, so people closest to the pain, right? Being part of the solution. You cannot understand my struggle if you've never been through it. You can empathize, you can sympathize, but you can never understand something you've never been through. Too many times we're looking for someone who's never experienced something to come up with a solution. Someone like QB can tell you what it's like to sleep in a park, unfortunately. Right? So he's going to tell you what it takes to make sure a kid never has to sleep there. Why he goes so hard for the parks program. Why do you go so hard to make sure these kids have recreation activities in the city?
Oh man, the park was my home. Like to this day, you won't find me going. It's nice out, even if it's cold. I'll be sitting in the park. Like, men had a men cave. Everybody got their safe haven. Well, mine's is the park. I hear them trees blowing. Oh, I can scream loud as I want. Ain't got to worry about no citation. Nobody come knocking on my door. But as a child, home was messed up. I was about to say something else. I'm glad I caught that. But home was messed up. I didn't really want to be around at times. I didn't want to come in at certain times because they wanted me to eat things like liver, and at that time I couldn't feed myself, so I had to come in and eat. But then you started noticing the drugs. So now, you just going next door, That's why, I know Spanish so much because, my neighbors was Puerto Rican. So, I used to go next door to the Colognes, you know what I mean? And they took me in and, kind of like,
I have to share, QB. I never knew how you became bilingual. So you guys may not know QB is bilingual, and there's a story. There's always a story behind something, but it's interesting that you pointed that you shared that, right? Because that's the strength that you have that has benefited our community when we're trying to resolve conflict, when we need to communicate with people, and it came from, a survival instinct of yours. So,
Yes.
so thank you for sharing that.
No problem. Yes. They call BCW. It's like, children and youth, but back in the days, the early 90s, it was called BCW. They came to my school and told me I had to go with them. So I'm like, yeah, I gotta go to the bathroom. But they know the drilly. They knew what it was anyway. So they let me go to the bathroom. Well, we all know I ain't come back. You know what I mean? But I had to come back because they had my brothers and my sister. So when I came back, I told them the only way that I was coming back, that I didn't want to live with a certain aunt. Because I know that these people will be giving money for us, for each individual child, and she would just say that they giving her this amount of money and she's going to keep the money. Back then, family always money hungry. So I chose to come back to the kids got situated, and I used to have to sleep in the park, which was no problem because, summertime, I go sleep in the park, go to the pool, take a shower in the pool, leave, put my good clothes on, and go back to the projects to hustle.
I don't want us to brush past that. So there's some important points that he said there. First of all, because we keep pointing out, right, that poverty is violent, right? So his mom being a drug addict meant the family had to be given to an aunt, someone who didn't necessarily care, but because she was blood, got to get these children and they got to get money for these children. You've seen this happen a lot of times in communities, especially impoverished communities, where people take on children that they could care less about in order to get a check, because that check provides more food for them, provides more stability for them. It didn't matter how it affected the child, but because it provided something for that household. There are many children that became latchkey kids, became gang members, became victims of the streets because the system didn't take the time to check back, because they thought they did a job. You know, when we're talking about really attacking violence, if we're really going to cure violence, but we have to start to look at all of the symptoms, all of the things. So we can't just wait till we have a QB in jail. You know, when we could have helped him before. One of the things No Child Left Behind did was leave a lot of children behind. Let me repeat that for you. One thing No Child Left Behind did was leave a lot of children behind, because they pushed them through a system without the education that they needed in order to win in life. And then when they become who they become, we want to blame them. When we don't provide, you know, tutoring in impoverished neighborhoods. We're a city in Allentown without a community center. How are we the third largest city in our state? We don't have a community center for our kids to be able to play in. You know, these are all things that actually help to build self-esteem. Self-esteem, self-confidence allows you to be able to deal with your impoverished neighborhood. Even though my mom wasn't the best, she did a lot to make sure she built on my confidence. I'm a short black guy with big bifocal glasses. Yeah, I took my hat off so you can see these things are thick. It was important, right, to have that support system. But if you're talking to a child like QB, mom's on drugs, dad's not away, auntie's getting a check, but don't give a F. Where do you turn? If you're in a city like Allentown, where there is no resources set aside for these children, where do you turn? We have a young lady currently who suffered from a stroke, who's given her life to this city because this city didn't have the resources put in place for her to not have to do unthinkable things just to survive, as she spent half her day, half her life trying to help others, trying to be the change she wants to see in this city. So how do we do something? What can we do first? First, be accountable. Be accountable. You know, what are you doing today that, you know, Hassan always asks, what are you doing today to help the liberation of our people? What are you doing today to help a child feel safe? What are you doing today to let a returning citizen know, right, that their mistake can be forgiven? Like, you have Hassan, you have me, and you think that you, a lot of times you've forgiven the mistakes of returning citizens. Sometimes you forget that we are even returning citizens, because his name is Dr. Hassan Batts. You forget that he even is a returning citizen. So we closed the door on someone like a Jose previously. You know, we were also proud to watch him graduate, you know, and get his degree. But how many times has that happened in our city? Not many. And why? Because too many times we've forgotten a quick quote that you can, I wrote it in my book, right? It's not our job to judge, but our blessing to love. It's not our job to judge anyone. How many of us have made mistakes and no one ever caught it? Just because I went to jail didn't make me less of a criminal than you or more of a criminal than you. I know people who have done bigger crimes than QB has ever done. That's never spent a day in jail. They just never got caught. Just because they didn't get caught doesn't mean that they're any better than any of us. How many of us have said, you know what, today I'm going to extend my hand and ask somebody, how can I help? How many times have we said to someone like a QB or Jose that your experience means something and your experience can add value to the solution? How many times have we called somebody who actually cared before we called the police? I've been blessed because of the work that we do here. You know, we can talk about the shootings that we've stopped that don't get reported. We can talk about the kidnappings that we've had people return from that don't get reported. But we could also talk about the love that came after it that never gets reported, right? Relationships. Each one of you people that are watching this Zoom, outside of making a donation, which would be awesome, right? Because we can always use more help for the cause, you know, can actually establish a relationship with someone. You can actually change the community norm by changing yourself and extending your expertise, your experience to be a mentor to someone. You can tell someone about a job that you had that you may not have previously offered to someone who is formerly incarcerated. There are even benefits in our county if you do so, right? There's OJP, which is additional funding you can get from workforce development to hire someone who's as passionate as QB. We can take the time, and Ola, if you can take us through the slides, I'd like to see if we can walk them through those 3 slides that we have, because those, you know, will actually show you things you can do to make a difference, right?
Yes. So Paz, I'm gonna put those slides up for you, and then we want to make sure that at around 2, we give people an opportunity to do discussion and question and answer. So I have some more slides to put up for to kind of guide the discussion. Okay, so I'm gonna put.
So from these slides, we'll go into your discussion. So we'll open it up for them. So I know people got questions for Naquan. You know, they may have some questions for me, but he's the star of the show. So.
Okay, I'm gonna put the slides back up for you.
Thank you. So as you see the slides, right, first is being able to stop and interrupt potential danger, right? If you see something, say something. You know, it doesn't always have to be say something to the police, right? Because too many times, you know, we're too willing to sit by and sit idle. Well, if you see something, say something. That's real simple. You know, you don't have to be a tough guy to say something. You know, the reason that we lost George Floyd is because people were too busy videotaping instead of saying something. It took anybody that was videotaping could have easily pushed that cop off of George to make him just shoved him a little bit. Didn't even have to push him, just shoved him a little bit just to make him think. You know, at any moment, we can be the change by just interrupting, right? Getting somebody to think about something different. You know, at Promise Neighborhood, you'll see QB come here, especially when he has something on his mind, because he trusts me enough, right? Because of our relationship, to say, hey, this is what I was thinking about doing. And I can interrupt. As you saw in the article from CNN, you know, QB was pretty mad that day, the very first time the CNN lady came in. They were like, oh man,
I didn't even know who that was.
he didn't even know who it was. He was just being QB.
I was in my feelings.
You know, but when he returned out of that bathroom, as you can see the bathroom behind us, it says employees only. When he walked out of there, you know, we were able to calm him down. He was able to get a hug. He was able to be reminded, right, of his real reason for living. And then the next one is, right, group and community norm change, right? Group and community norm change, right? Changing how we interact, changing what we're doing. We got to see that now, right? Because by providing opportunities to QB and them, they now have jobs that they didn't have before. They now have different ways to provide for their families they didn't have before. They now have new discussions that they could talk about. Like, we don't have to talk about selling drugs, and we could talk about delivering diapers, right? We don't have to talk about destruction when we can talk about great things. So group and community norm change. When you provide an opportunity for one, you're really providing an opportunity for the many, because that one gets to talk about something new. They get to talk about hope, right? Creating that sense of hope. There are guys that come in our office now because they are hopeful. Jose graduating college changed the community norm for his family. He is now a 48-year-old Latin King college graduate. So now his kids know they can do it too. After 14 years of prison, he did it. He got his cap and gown, right? He did it. So things that we can do, right? And then just showing up, not because you have to, but because you're blessed to. So Ola, I'm gonna let you take them through the rest of the slides that you have. We're gonna open ourselves up to answer any questions. You know, I'm gonna give the floor back to the star of the show. I mean, if you see my glasses, mine don't even tint like his. You see how cool those are? Like, look at them. You know, so.
He ain't take his medicine today, y'all. It's all right.
Thank you both so much. This is really a raw conversation, and I think we all got the opportunity to kind of hear a lot about both of your story and the impact of violence and trauma and poverty. And I think it's really important for us to sit with what it felt like to hear you all describe it and talk about how you lived it, and for us to be here with you while we're uplifting your voice and just making sure that we are also framing ourselves in a position to be solutions based, right? Because this is a really powerful group of people, like Dr. Batts first said when he got on. This is a group of folks who are doctors and practitioners and students and university staff, and these are people who have the ability to make change in Allentown on an individual level in their relationships, but also on a community and policy level. So hearing your voices, Paz and QB, is important, and we just want to make sure that we focus it so that everybody knows that this is connected to the social determinants of health, and we're talking right now about disrupting violence, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to share my screen so you all can see the slides that I put up.
Thank you, Ola, for that. And Paz and QB, thank you, man.
Absolutely. Okay, so first wanted to just talk about unpacking, or just mention, as I was also having the experience here, listening to the stories and thinking about, let me go back, sorry. Thinking about what the experience was like. I want to talk about I just jotted down this, experiencing trauma and internalized racial oppression has an impact on our language, how we see ourselves, what we feel like we can do, how we communicate respect, and our safety. So I know there were some moments where QB was saying, oh, I got to tailor how I speak to you all and make sure that it's different. We engage in this code switching, and, sometimes we use language with each other, language about ourselves and about what we're doing that isn't compassionate and isn't kind, and it comes from having these experiences. It comes from the violence that we've experienced and the poverty. So I just was thinking about that, and I wanted to make sure that we unpack that. I also wanted to bring us back to the role of cure violence and the movement to address violence from a trauma-informed and public health perspective. So Dr. Bax, you were making some points earlier and people couldn't really hear you. You were driving, I think. And so if you could just restate those two. I know that Paz is the project director for Cure Violence. And so I know people are going to want to ask him about that. But if you could, Dr. Bax, just restate those points that you made earlier about Cure Violence.
Yeah, I was just giving a little background about the model. So the Cure Violence model is a public health approach that looks at violence as a contagious disease. And when you hear folks like QB, or you guys met Jose last week, I believe it was, these guys are what we call credible messengers. So we use folks that are from the community, that are respected in community, trusted in the community, to address acts of violence prior to them occurring. So Paz talked a little bit about that, about disrupting acts as they're brewing and before they snowball out of control, and also to respond to every act of violence. So when there is an act of violence, to recognize that all acts of violence are precipitated by acts of violence. So to prevent the retaliation, you'll bring someone in like QB, who is very well respected in our community. So where someone may not talk to me, or they may not talk to Ola and tell them what's going on, QB is able to get to the heart of the issue and to mediate things and prevent retaliation. So the other thing I was mentioning is that it's an international model that has the ability to decrease violence up to 81%, I think, of some of the outcomes you see across the communities that fully implement it. So it's powerful. It's a lot of work that comes out of the University of Illinois about it, and it really speaks to the foundation of all of our work, even this webinar series around the value of content and context experts. So QB and Paz are context experts. They live in the community, they love the community, they've grown up in the community, and they're respected and trusted in the community. And when we think of violence as a contagious disease, when we think of even the work that Paz talked about around addressing COVID, when we think around work around substance use and folks like, trying to remember the name of the training that you go through. Oh, CRs, what is it called? It's this idea of using people with lived experience and working with people with lived experience to promote healing and thriving in communities. So that's it.
So I'll continue to build on that. So, Cure Violence is an international model. Like he said, in most cities, it can cure up to 80% of the violence. We've seen in major cities like New York City, it do great numbers. Places like Queensbridge Projects, which is the largest projects in the United States, went through over 700 days without a shooting, let alone a murder, which is huge. With Cure Violence, we don't just track just the number of murders, but the shootings, the incidents, and it breaks down to 5 components. We talked about 3 of them during the Zoom, but first is detecting and interrupting any potential violence, you know, and then it's treating those closest to the violence, right? So if there's an incident that jumps off, you know, making sure that, you know, to prevent retaliation, like Dr. Bat said, knowing who might retaliate, you know, knowing what they might need, you know, creating a sense of peace and sense of calm in their families, you know, then group and community norm changes. Then there's also data and monitoring, right? Because you got to collect data, you know, because I can tell you all of the great things I've done, but if I don't track it, you don't believe me, you know. And then also training, you know, we're constantly being trained. These men are constantly being educated, because like we say in the 4 E's, right? Education is the main one. You know, you're only as good as what you know. So
Absolutely. Thank you, Paz. I wanted to take a break here too, just to get the audience participation in a particular way. So some of you have already seen, some of the students have definitely seen this. This is a app that you can use that's going to generate a word cloud. It's going to be really cool. You're going to see everything pop up on the screen. But what you all have to do is pull out your phone and go to www.menti.com. So Paz and QB, I hope y'all do this too, because it's going to be really cool when we see it all come together. So you go to that website on your phone and then use the code 391894 when they prompt you. Okay, and you all see it growing in front of us.
is it, how do you spell Minty? Okay.
It's up the top. It should be at the top up here, but it's MENTI. Yeah.
So if you guys take notes of what Ola's doing, there are a couple things, right? She's engaging the audience. So this is community engagement, and also this community-based participatory research. I mean, she's gathering data from you guys, and she's not just gathering data, but she's doing something that we always like to represent. Is she's showing you what she's doing with it. So oftentimes people will come into our communities and just do surveys and questionnaires and focus groups and just disappear. She's gathering the data in real time and showing you like what the results are, because the idea is that the research informs the decision making in the community. So thank you, Ola, for that.
No problem. Yes, absolutely. And then one cool thing about the way this program works is, and it's also the way that a lot of qualitative analysis is done once you take in data from the community, from interviews. You want to zero in on those themes that are showing up the most. So the larger the word, the more people are responding to that, right? So we see that understanding is the largest here. So that means that multiple people have cited understanding as a way to create a sense of belonging in communities, and that's awesome. Love is larger than some other ones, so we see that develop, and thank you all so much for participating in that.
Yeah, I do want to note, just to share how we got to using the cure violence model, which also speaks to this, is in all of our data gathering, what we found is regardless of demographics, regardless meaning like race, socioeconomic, age, location in the city, and this is through, again, large surveys. We're talking about thousands of people, focus groups, questionnaires, one-on-one stakeholder interviews. The number one issue that came to the top, regardless of demographics, was safety. So we began to have this conversation on how can we create safety across our community, and looked at some national models and worked with some partners to identify this model. But so back to what you're saying, Olis, the issue kept coming up. You know, when you see these patterns, you know it's really a reality. So regardless of demographics across the city, people kept saying they wanted a safer community. They wanted a sense of safety. They wanted to feel safer in Allentown. So how do we do that? And that's why we chose Cure Model.
Thank you, Dr. Bass. This is going to keep growing as people put in things. I'm going to move on to the next slide, but it lives. Like, it's a living program. So it evolves as people enter in things. All right, so I wanted to put up here some additional questions that I thought of for Paz and QB, just based off of what they were saying. And so I wanted to give you all the opportunity to kind of hear from them under this, feeding off of their stories that they shared, more about specifically some things that I know that they both do, and things that I feel like are of interest based on the social determinants of health and ways to interrupt violence, right? So, Paz, you mentioned the 4 E's. Could you talk a little bit more about them and ways that Promise Neighborhoods of Lehigh Valley is working to implement them?
Yes, the 4 E's are, first, education, employment, entrepreneurship, and most importantly, emotional support. That's the 1 E that most of us forget to deal with. Emotional support, that's mental health. So the ways that we're implementing that is a number of ways. First of all, we have a partnership with Workforce Development, which is allowing us to get access to employment opportunities before they go on the market. It allows us to talk to them about trainings that are necessary and needed for, returning citizens. It allows us to give them real input from those closest to the pain. Education, we've seen education in many ways. Thank God. We've seen Jose graduate. That is something that is from the Second Chance grant, which is a grant set up for people incarcerated. We've learned how to continue that grant for when you come home, because a lot of times, if you don't get your college degree while you are incarcerated, when you come home, you don't finish because there are too many obstacles to get through. So Jose is our first real success story of getting through those obstacles. So education, mentorship. We have mentoring programs in both the elementary and the high school. Right now, because of COVID, we haven't been able to continue the same way, but we are excited to come in the near future, and then entrepreneurship. Promise Neighborhood has a program called Entrepreneurs Without Limits. We teach entrepreneurship here. We teach the children entrepreneurship. Also having good partners. CACLV has a Start Your Own Business class where we've sent students through so that they can learn the basics of business, and then supporting them with new mentors and other supporting cast that can help and guide them to continue to grow their business.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Paz. What are some things that people can do to cure violence in their community?
I'm gonna let QB give some. What do you think some people can do to help? QB, what can they do to help cure violence in their community?
Look out for one another. Costs nothing to look out for somebody. Costs nothing to help somebody cross the street. Costs nothing to generally knock on somebody's door and ask them how they doing if they need anything today. Simple. To be honest with you, helping someone is actually, you have to care first. It's the biggest point. If you don't care, then it don't make sense.
Right.
A good friend of mine sent me a quote yesterday, and I don't want to get too religious, so I don't really care. I don't care how you connect to God. If you call him Jesus, Allah, whatever you call him, right? But he sent me a quote. He said, for all of us waiting on God, do what waiters do, serve. If we go out there and serve, right, we can cure violence. Do what waiters do, serve. There's somebody right now that can use your help. If you pick up the phone, even if it's just to listen to them. One of the things we did here simply during COVID was we connected our seniors, to a child, and had that child just check on them every day. Say, hey, how you doing? You awake? You alive? You living? Something so small. So it's the little things that can take you farther.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Paz, another question for you is, can you talk about happiness engineering and the impact that it has on safety and peace? I know that's your thing. You didn't talk about it at all this whole time.
Oh man, definitely. I mean, well, one of the things we're doing is we're creating Allentown to be the happiest city in America. You know, we say first of all, a smile, right, is the key to unlocking your happiest self, right? And a smile, well, we've broken smile down into an acronym, right? Smile is just seeing miracles in life every day, seeing miracles in life every day. So every day there's a miracle, even if you don't, you go, what miracles did I have? Life and breath. That's a miracle. Because right now, somebody is not breathing and someone just died. Those two things, if you can just celebrate life and breath, you can find new ways to continue to find an attitude of gratitude, right? An attitude of gratitude can change your whole lifestyle, right? Because you cannot see the gift of life looking through ungrateful eyes. Let me repeat that for you. You cannot see the gift of life looking through ungrateful eyes. And the greatest thing in the world is that we live in the present. And if you know what a present is a gift. So if we're looking through grateful eyes, every moment is a gift. And then happiness engineering, you know, is we've taken happiness and broken it down to a real basic formula, right? And it's so simple. Thoughts plus feelings plus actions equal happiness, right? You have to first think it, then you have to feel it. But if you think it and feel it and you don't do anything about it, you're still gonna have that misery creep in, that doubt keep creeping. But thoughts plus feelings plus action equals happiness. Because the more time you can act, the more time you can serve, the better you feel.
Thank you. So the next question I have is, what does it mean to take an active role in eliminating poverty? I think this is huge for individuals, but also for people who represent systems who are on this webinar, right? So people who are working for the hospital, people who are engaged in any type of policy work, people who have the ability to fund projects. What would you say?
Yeah, simple. Your dollars are your value statements. Real simple, you know. And I know a lot of times I don't get in front of the camera because I'm a little too I'm not politically correct. You know, if you want to actively eliminate poverty, if you are a policy maker, write a policy that actually provides funding in our inner cities. You know, if you are someone who is a decision maker, start including the community in your decisions. Too many times we're having people make decisions about activities, about things they think people should attend, and then they're mad when no one attends, but they did not include the people that should attend in the policy procedures, in the making of things. If you want to actively eliminate poverty, first of all, invest in some part of the 4 E's, right? Help someone get better educated. Help someone get a better job. Help someone open up a business. Help someone get the emotional support they need. You know, and this is something that we deal with a lot, especially for our policymakers, right? People, returning citizens come home from prison all the time, and they do not have the medical clearance. They do not have the welfare necessary for them to continue to get the help that they need, whether it's medication, whether it's counseling. And then when they turn on us, whose fault is that? So if you want to do something, provide ways for people who are coming home to continue to receive the counseling that they need. I mean, QB, you may have some more things. I can keep going. how do you think someone can, actively eliminate poverty? These are policymakers. What policy would you think would help your children?
Well, if they make Juneteenth a national holiday, for one, to show that they really taking stand. And what I think will help my kids is if we all can really come together as one, like no racism, don't matter what color you are, what race you speak. Sometimes, for the most part, it don't even matter if you stink, just as long as you come in a genuine and great energy, good vibes. I mean, I don't want to say, what's the word I'm looking for? Plus, poverty is like, hey, tell him to close that door. Poverty is, hold on, my mouth is dry. Excuse me for a moment. My mouth dries.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, you can ask anything you want. I've been waiting for questions. I can't wait.
Well, I want to ask, because this has come up a lot in a lot of videos I'm watching and stuff, about the kids really know their history, not the history that is taught in most white schools. And how important do you think that is?
I mean, history is the most important. It's only really three things that they really push you to know in school. Math, writing, and reading. They don't push you to know the real history, not the one that they just put forth toward us.
I think, and history is important. The only history that we're taught in school is life after the Middle Passage. And life after the Middle Passage for young black men and black women doesn't give you the history of who you really are. They don't teach about Egypt, and when you see Egypt now, you see Arabs. I actually remember going to Moravian Academy and actually getting into an argument with my history teacher because I told him that the people in Egypt are invaders. They came in 640 AD and they don't look like me. So understanding our history, and I knew that because my father taught me my history. And history is taught down from generation to generation, but is eliminated from school. If you knew that you were from greatness, wouldn't you strive for greatness?
Exactly.
But if you only think that the only stories that we hear of is stories of rebellion. That's our stories of greatness, right? Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey. Those are all stories from the Middle Passage. They don't tell you about the stories of King Tut, the stories of not even Nefertiti, but Nefertari, her mother. Nefertari meaning more beautiful than beautiful. We don't talk about those things in school. So it's important, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Julie and Paz and QB for, bringing that point up. I think, just to kind of bring it back to, because we want to, just to bring it back to what we're talking about here, we want to help people make the connections, right? So we're talking about curing violence, and we're talking about interrupting systems and norms that create the environment so that people engage in violence. You all have mentioned multiple times that poverty is a huge root for violence, that people engage in violence and activities that lead to violence because they're impoverished. And I hear that you're making a connection to being disconnected from your history and your identity, and not having positive models, not feeling positively about yourself and your existence in the world, and how that is reinforced by your situation, how you're impoverished, and then that leads you into make choices that create violence for the community. So those are the connections that I'm making there. And I just want to, I know everybody's going to draw different connections from what they're hearing, but just thinking about how all of this then leads back to violence, right? QB, I have another question for you, and then I'm gonna let people ask questions as at will. But have you found that there are ways to engage in gang activity peacefully and safely?
I do it every day. Every day I do it. I just did it yesterday. As a matter of fact, I just resumed from somebody getting their head blown off Valania Park yesterday. You know, they didn't see me sitting in my car. They was having a little dispute. One of the little homies was having a little dispute in the park with another homie, and I'm asking them, well, if you heard him, I just gave him a simple scenario. If you heard him, and y'all both the same people, who are they going to hurt? Well, should you hurting yourself? So why would you want to hurt him, and why would he want to hurt you? Which is a major violation, you know? Major violation, you know?
Yeah. I think we
You
heard
understand?
Jose talk last week about his involvement in the gang and how, you know, important it was to be on the inside still and be able to influence people and help lead people down to the right choices. And even so, I'm just thinking about ways that we've created a sense of, we're trying to create a sense of belonging. And you talked about earlier in your story how you found belonging, you found community in the gang. And so just ways that we as support people can wrap around that and make sure that kids and youth in the community are finding ways to belong with each other peacefully and safely, right? If you all have suggestions or solutions for that, that we're all talking about how to make that happen.
You want a solution? Don't let them join the gangs. Create opportunities. If you want to stop gang violence, create opportunities so the gangs can't recruit them. Period. You've heard Jose say it many times. QB has said it too. You know, if you want to end gang violence, open up a community center. Open up things that the kids can go into. Create senses of belongings. Create places where they can go and get away. The reason I was able to create relationships is because in my community there was a guy who now works for CIS in Jacksonville, but he was in Harlem back then. He invested his time, his energy to create a safe haven for us. You know, there is no safe haven in Allentown. You show me a place where kids can go hang out safely. The Boys and Girls Club are nice, but they unfortunately, the kids no longer relate. You have to make sure that, you know, there's some kind of, you know, they don't know when it's open. You know, there's if you do not create a space for kids to go to, no one understand that the gang members will. It's that simple. You know, QB tells you the story about how the gang loved him first. They don't show you hate first. They love you first. And if you feel love, and then from love comes loyalty. And from once they have love and loyalty, we lose them. So if you want to do something before we get to them. The reason that we start dealing with children at such a young age at Promise Neighborhood and invest in them is because we know if we don't get to them first, the streets will.
Right. Thank you, Paz and QB. Okay, so I threw some discussion questions up for you guys just to stimulate. However, if you already have questions, then I'll just go ahead and let you all ask them. Okay, I see a raised hand. I'm going to let Chelsea unmute herself and ask a question.
Hi. So my question, when we started to look up like community resource stuff online, I found this like Allentown Weed and Seed resources, and it was like 16 pages of like after school things, like literary center, like stuff like that. Do you think children know about these places, or are you saying most of these places like they don't know what time they're open? Like,
Couple of things. First of all, if you got the Allentown Weed and Seed guide, that guide is old. because Allentown Weed and Seed been gone for a very long time.
Right.
Unfortunately, Miss Phyllis, who ran Allentown Weed and Seed, is now running Leadership Without Limits for Promised Neighborhoods. So more likely those resources are old, outdated, and if they were, the kids don't know about them. No, they don't.
So do you think a way to help would be maybe working on an updated list of resources, finding like what resources there are right now and make these available, like hand them out at schools, like have the teachers talk to them like about the, you know what I mean? I think we talked to I think it was Jose, and Jose said like during homeroom, nothing's done during homeroom. Like why can't these resources be passed out to the children? Like this is what is available, kind of thing.
I just want to say, I think that's a great idea. I don't know if that's being done anywhere, but I think it's a great idea. I was involved a number of years ago. I was involved with Weed and Seed. I was one of the after school programs, but I think having those resources available is really important. I think kids don't know about them and parents don't know about them.
And I didn't know it was outdated, so that's.
I don't know if it's updated.
No, I think they're saying it's not.
Okay, yes, yeah.
It's been gone for years, but you see, the problem is not getting the resources. The problem is getting the kids' attention.
Right.
You understand me? Once I got the attention, I can have them do anything in the world.
And I think that speaks a lot to you saying, making sure it's relevant, making sure it's what they want to go to, things they're interested in.
I just be wanting to see what they interested in.
Right.
And I wing it from that. I go off they interest. The kids come to me every day to do an event. Like right now, I'm waiting for them to fully put us all the way in green where the park should open up. These kids want to play basketball. That's all they want to do all day, every day, basketball. That's it. Sports is the most important way to get through these kids besides music. Because it's you know, it's the new trend of the 2000s. It's the new trend, the music, the clothes, the flash, the wearing. It's the only way to get to them.
Do you think putting out surveys in schools and asking children, like, what are you guys interested in? Like you said, basketball, music, see what they want to do,
Yeah. Surveys. I will actually even like to have like you know, like they already got one out here, but I would like something a little bit different than what they got. It's like a big brother, big sister program, you know, to where you actually, you know, get a child, you know, and have a chance to sit down and actually build with them and actually see what else kids be thinking about other than schoolwork. You know what I mean?
Thank you. That's great. Would love to work on that.
Very cool. Does anybody else have a question? I think something's in, let me see. All right. In the chat, looks like Nikita has a comment that goes hand in hand with the cooperation of the school districts too. Who's going to be the point of person for this outreach into school? Right. Thank you, Nikita, for raising that point. So Paz and QB, do you have anything to say about the way that systems interact in Allentown and what needs to happen to get the systems on one accord?
Well, as far as getting it to the school system and school district, we can actually do that. So one of the good things about Zero Youth Violence is that we are even though we are housed by Promise Neighborhood, we are a city collaborative. So I deal with ASD, I deal with APD, and most of our anchor organizations in our city. We have a year's worth of work under our belt together. You know, we have a year's worth of success to lean on now. So I think, you know, getting the messaging to ASD is a lot simpler because we know who it would go to, right? So it's not a guessing game. It's the person that sits on our board would actually hand that out. So that's not as much of an issue.
Nice. So what I'm hearing then is Promise Neighborhoods is really in a great position to connect resources. So it's all about just the coordination, right? You know, like getting things out there, getting the kids' interests. So I think everyone on this call has the ability to work with promised neighborhoods to achieve that. And that's really exciting. It's great when you talk about issues that we see and we have solutions that are ready to be implemented. So thank you all so much for having that dialogue. So it sounds like maybe we don't have too many more questions. We are coming to the end of our time. If you do find that you have questions over time, please feel free to email them to me or to any email that you have of any staff at Promise Neighborhoods, and we'll make sure we get them to Paz and QB so that they can follow up and continue the conversation. I just want to put this poll out. I'll put the poll out, and then Julie, if you want to go ahead and do you're here with us, so you can do the wrap up and announce next week if you like.
Oh, just give me 1 minute.
Okay.
Just give me 1 minute. Okay, because I didn't know I'd be back on this call. Okay. Let me know when you're ready for me to.
Oh yeah, go ahead. The poll is going, so
Okay.
people can fill it out and listen to you at the same time.
Okay, so next week, I think next week, let me just look at this if I have the right date here.
So next week we're off.
Oh, we're off.
Yes.
So the next week is going to be July the 13th. And the topic is food justice, dismantling the apartheid food system. And our presenters will be Katara Jordan, who's the executive director of the Second Harvest Food Bank, and Sharon Fraser, who's a health coach, and a community member. And the reading is called Farming While Black. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that book, but it is really a fantastic book. So I highly recommend it. It's a easy read and it's an engaging read. So thank you for being there, and I'm going to sign off and look forward to seeing you on July the 13th.
Nice, thank you, Julie. So yes, thank you. We want to extend a thank you again to Paz and QB. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us, for sharing your perspective, for lifting your voice. QB actually said something the other day that I just thought was so profound, and so I hope that you all recognize this. Let me see, let me find it because I know I wrote it down. Oh yeah, QB said, now that I finally got a platform where people can listen to me, right?
Right.
So QB has had things to say. He has had feelings about his experience and about what he sees going on in his community. And so this is his opportunity to share that with people who are in the position to make different choices in how you engage and radically welcome someone who has experienced trauma. So we're grateful for this opportunity to share in that with you, and we take it very seriously. Lots of people have chimed in on the chat, guys, to show their appreciation. Thank you so much for your excellent presentation, Fatima says. Charlene said, thank you, Paz and QB, for keeping it real and sharing your story. Nikita said, thank you for sharing your stories and contributing back to the community. Noelle said, thank you, such a great presentation. Abigail said, thank you. Kenza said, thank you, everyone. So people are really grateful to hear from you both. So again, if anybody has any follow-up questions or things that you want to explore more, please, Emmeline said, thank you. Please just send out an email so we can get those to Paz and QB.
Well, we thank every one of you guys for taking the time out of your day to, spend some time to listen to some real truth. And I hope that you go home and realize that you can be a part of the solution, that you can do something, that whatever effort you make to fight poverty can change the outcome of any violent outbreaks, right? Fight poverty and change violence. That
Yeah.
should be your narrative. Could be what you like to leave them with.
It costs nothing to help somebody, man. I'm gonna be big on that. It costs nothing to help one another. Somebody might need a pencil. Somebody might got peanut butter, ain't got no jelly. It costs nothing to help someone. If any one of y'all ever need me, you know where to find me. And I mean, please don't be shy. I'm an open book. And I'm only talking in this manner because we all on this. But, you know, if you really want the real, y'all can pull up and we can have a nice sit down. And, you know, I put it all on the table for you with no problem. I might even have a couple more other people to tell y'all some other things that might even make y'all more interested.
Mm. All right. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Everybody, take care of yourselves.
Thanks
Have
so
a great
much.
day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.